I'm gonna show you how to make this multi-function crosscut sled. This thing is almost dead accurate. It also has an adjustable fence that you can cut angle cuts on. It has these adjustable stop blocks so that you can make repeatable, accurate cuts every single time. And it incorporates dovetail clamps to clamp your workpieces down safely for those small parts. So this is actually going to be the back fence, or the ones closest to me on the table saw sled. I'm just going to glue these together so that we can kind of make it double thick. And these are 3 inches wide. There's plans available for this sled along with the links of the supplies used to build it in the description below. Now this next trick I actually saw Mr. Jonathan Katz Moses. So he actually found this or saw this on 3x3 Customs channel. If you actually clamp a level to the back side of this glue up, it'll help keep everything nice and straight. Now we'll let that dry probably overnight, but all it takes a few hours. All right, so I bought this T-track because it's thicker on the bottom and it has these pre-drilled holes in it. And they're also countersunk so that it's easier to attach and you've got more meat to bite into there. So I've taken this out of the clamps. It's straight as Hawkeye's arrow. Check that out. It's really straight. Just want to make sure everything's square after jointing. And as you can see, it is really a square. So I'll run a test piece through on my dado stack and I made sure that this T-track is going to fit in there oh so perfectly. Like butter. Flush on top, perfect fit, no wobble, no wiggle. So now I've got the fence out of the clamps. I've got to cut it down to size and then also embed the T-track in there so my stop block can run in the T-track. That's what I'm doing now. That level trick, genius. This thing is like flat, like this, not bent or nothing. So that's excellent and it's what we want. Now I just got to figure out how wide I actually want my crosscut sled to be. So I'm gonna square this end up, then we're gonna cut it to length. Yeah. So I want to line this T-track up with the edge of this board back here. Make sure that's flush and then you can cut it with your miter saw. It's just aluminum. So I got that pretty close to center. It doesn't have to be exact. We're not making a clock here. So I got the slot cut for the T-track. Let's see if it's gonna fit. It should fit right in there, just like so. Yep, it's gonna fit. I'm gonna throw down some brown CA glue. It doesn't really matter what color you're using. You do you. Nice snug fit using that dado stack, and I just got a plywood splinter. Those suck. Handy dandy hammer with rubber ends, and I'm just gonna screw this down. So I've got it cut for my width, and now I'm gonna cut my depth. I don't want it to be too deep that I'm way back here when it starts out. You want it to actually be setting on the saw. So I've got my basic sled cut out. Now I'm going to figure out where I want the blade to come across the sled at, as well as where I want my dovetail grooves to go. I'm going to show you how to do these. Really cool system from Micro G. The main thing is I don't want the dovetail grooves to interfere with anything going on under here when I screw in the tracks for the miter slots. All right, so I got the relief bit done. Now I'm going to do the dovetail bit. It's set at 3/8 inch deep. I'm gonna cut this groove, then I'm gonna move on to the other grooves. And I'm using the dovetail clamps to actually hold down this piece while I route the groove. So it's kind of a clamp inception. I'll drop a link in the description below to all this stuff if you're interested. So now I've got those dovetail grooves in there, and actually now I need to put some tracks on here for it to run in the miter bar. And I'm just gonna cut those out of hardwood, cut those out of whatever you want, but I wouldn't cut it out of pine or spruce. Anything that's soft, it won't last as long. So I've actually got a digital caliper. You don't have to have one of these to measure, but it just makes things a lot easier to go faster. Once I get my measurement here, I can lock this down. That should be right at 0.7525. Move my fence over. Now I'm gonna cut a test piece and see if it fits. Once I find out when one fits, then I will actually use the hardwood and cut my two strips. That has just a little bit of play in it. Span that out just a little. So it's actually just a little too tight. That is a really good fit right there. So I actually had some blood wood left over. I ripped strips out of those that fit the miter slot, and they're gonna move in there without being loosey-goosey. So I'm gonna put a couple of washers down and so that it lifts this up out of the groove so that when I set my sled down on it, it'll actually touch this and not the table itself. So I measured over where I wanted the blade to come through, which is, for me, is 12 inches from the right side of the sled. You do it however you want. And now that that's set, I can just leave that fence, and that's gonna give me a reference for when I put this back on there. And this one actually is a little loose, and so I just shimmed it with a sticker that I had. And I'll just put some CA glue down on the track, and I will actually spray this side with activator just to hold it long enough for those to stick in the tracks. Once it's stuck, I'll just pick it up out of there, flip it over, and then I'll permanently attach them with countersunk screws on the bottom. And I'll trim them off flush as well. So it should only take about 3 countersunk screws per track. I don't see any reason for it to be more than that. Yep, that's what we want, folks. Slide smooth as butter. It's not wompy jawed. It doesn't move left or right. It doesn't twist. It runs and smooth in those grooves. I'll sand everything, put some paste wax on it here in a minute to make it even smoother. Now we're going to actually put the fences on. This back fence doesn't really matter if it's square. We'll line it up, but that doesn't matter because you're not going to be referencing the back fence. This front fence, or the fence closest to you, that's the one that's going to matter. We're going to make sure we get that square. I don't want to leave it just a square, so I'm just going to measure over, say, 1 inch and put like a 30-degree angle on this just make it look better. You big dummy. Y'all see that? Yeah, I don't like that. Stand by. What happened was, this was a little bit too wide, and it was actually blocking these grooves, which I did not want. Trimmed it more narrow. Eyes narrow. Now I'm happy with it. Yeah. Because if it's too wide, it'll block access to my clamps, and I don't want that. All right, I'm gonna countersink and drill a couple of screws into here. I want to make sure I get it on each side because the blade will be coming down the middle, so we want to make sure we don't get it in the middle. So all I did was just go ahead and countersink 2 holes so that I can attach my back fence. So with that countersink hole under there, I'm just going to drive a screw up through there. I'm going to do the same thing on this end. Yeah. So now I'm going to go ahead and make my cut line in here, and then we will square the fence up. Here I'm using the 5-cut method to get this fence exactly square. I use Jonathan Katz's Moses video as a guide to get this right, so I'll link that video in the description below because he explains it a lot better than I ever could. I use my digital caliper as well as an online 5-cut method calculator to dial this right in, and I'll drop a link to that calculator in the description below as well. I wanted to get my fence as accurate as possible, so the 10th time was a charm. I got it dialed in to 0.0015 of an inch over 5 inches. So that is square as square can be. So I made an adjustable fence for my sled. I got this hardware kit that just slides right in these dovetails. Super simple. So now I can set the adjustable fence anywhere I need it to be if I don't want to cut squares. So I know this is a 30-degree angle because that's what I cut it on earlier. Just for giggles, I want to take this back piece. We're going to set it back here as a blade protector so that we don't chop our hand going through the blade. And I'm going to set the fence, my faux fence, at 30 degrees. So this is where the blade comes through on the back. We want to put a piece on there to protect our hand just in case you're there. It's kind of a reminder more than anything that, hey, the blade's fixing to come through here. Don't put your hand here or it's going to get chopped off. So you want to make sure that you keep that in mind And that's what that is for. It's not for you to put your hand there. It's a reminder that, hey, something's different. Don't put your hand there. Make sure that it's not too low so that it doesn't hit on your sled. So I'm actually just going to use glue. Wood glue. It's going to take 2 little washers, throw under there just to keep it raised up off of the table. That way I know for a fact that it is not going to touch. We'll just drive a couple of screws in there just to attach it. It looks cool anyway. There are 2 main reasons you want to make a crosscut sled. First, you want to make accurate square cuts. I've got this thing dialed in. It is probably the most accurate thing I've got in the whole shop. And the number 2 reason you want a sled like this is to put a stop block on there. I could make accurate, repeatable cuts every single time. Enter the Katz Moses stop block. The Katz Moses stop block is unique in a couple of ways. First and foremost, it's extremely solid and it's not going to deflect on you like other stop blocks do. You don't want this moving on you and deflecting. That's where the Katz Moses stop block shines, because it will not deflect. You can push a lot of pressure this away like I'm doing now, and you can see it set at 10 inches. It's not deflecting, it's not moving. Or if you get a little ham hands like myself and you actually run your stock into the stop block a little rougher than most normal people do, because most people just run it up and set it. But this, even if you're slamming it in there, it's still at 10 inches. Thing's not gonna move, it's rock solid. All you have to do is tighten these down, make sure that thumb screw right there is tight, you're good to go. If you've cut a piece that's a little bit too long, say you wanted it to be 6 inches and now you're at 6 1/16, the great thing about the Katz Moses stop block is you loosen this little thumb screw here and you can just micro adjust it. Push it toward the blade, look at that. We're right at 6 inches. We tighten that back down. We were able to micro adjust that without any loosening of these two and moving anything around. It's just a micro adjustment that you get dialed in perfectly for that perfect cut. Another awesome feature of the Katz Moses stop block is you can move it forward. So now I can just slide it underneath or behind the stop block, square up this end, flip the board over, and then make my cut without ever having to move or adjust this. So if you had several pieces that you wanted the same length, but you had to square up one end first, perfect scenario for this. So I actually built this fence to fit this Katz Moses stop block. There's about a 1/16 of an inch gap underneath it for sawdust or anything that won't obstruct it, and I could just kind of move it around. However, if you had a fence system that was taller, you could actually take this stop block and adjust it down and it still have the same features. You still got the anti-deflection, you still got the micro adjustment, and you can still move it forward and back away from the fence. Great thing about this is it interlocks, so you know every time that when it steps down, you've got a place to actually lock it in all the way down to there. You should pick one of these up. I'll put a link in the description below to these Katz Moses stop blocks. Put a little paste wax on these slides, help them glide through those grooves a lot easier. I'm actually just gonna go ahead and put wax on the whole bottom side of this so that everything slides like it should. You can also use the tray wax to treat the top of your table saw so that everything glides on there. Just wipe on, like butter. Now you don't have to treat the top of your sled with anything. However, I'm gonna put Odie's oil on there to protect mine. I like Odie's oil. I've used it on a bunch of projects if you watch this channel. You know what time it is, power tip time. One thing that I did figure out when I was trying to do this was my blade was actually not square to the miter fence or the miter gauge, the miter slot. So I actually went and Googled how to move this blade this way. Very easy, couple of screws in the back, undo, moved it, got it squared up, and these work. I actually tried to do a little piece of Purple Heart and ended up one end was more narrow than the other. So it's really tight down here, pretty loose down here. And so I knew something was going on. So make sure your blade is square to your miter slot and your miter slot is square to your fence. So if you're interested in building a sled just like this, I'll put links in the description below to where you can get the plans for it, as well as all the items I've used to make this the most awesome crosscut sled on YouTube. Hey, thank you for watching. If you click that box right there, it's gonna take you to 5 ways to joint boards without a jointer. Also, if you click that box, it's another one of my favorites. Clicking either one of those boxes, get you that big old virtual fist bump.